If you ask, when was the porn industry invented, the truth is that humanity's relationship with erotic expression began long before film, cameras, or even written language. But an industry, something organized, repeatable, commercial, didn't emerge until much later. Let me take you through the story, starting far earlier than you might expect, and ending in the era where the modern industry truly took shape. The story begins thousands of years ago in ancient civilizations where sexuality was documented through art more openly than in many later cultures. Archaeologists have found erotic carvings in prehistoric caves, some dating back over 30,000 years, but these weren't part of any organized trade. They were expressions, rituals, or symbols. The idea of producing erotic content for sale didn't truly exist. It wasn't until civilizations like ancient Greece, Rome, China, and Japan began developing more complex economies that sexual imagery found its first brushes with commercial value. Pottery in Greece depicted intimate scenes, Roman frescoes portrayed brothels and lovers, and woodblock prints in Japan, most famously shunga, were circulated for entertainment, humor, or even romantic guidance. These prints, especially in Edo-era Japan, are sometimes called the earliest mass-produced erotic media. Still, there was no industry, no system built specifically around the continual creation of sexualized products. But the seeds were there. Fast forward to the mid-15th century, when Johannes Gutenberg's printing press changed everything. Suddenly, books, pamphlets, and illustrations could be reproduced in large numbers. As soon as people realized this, erotic literature began to circulate through underground channels across Europe. This was the period where the earliest form of a proto-industry appeared: printers, writers, and illustrators who produced erotic works not only for art or culture, but for profit. These works were illegal in many countries, driving them into secret distribution networks. If you had asked a printer in 1600 whether he was part of an industry, he would have laughed. But look closely, and you see patterns emerging: demand, production, distribution, and even censorship battles, the same forces that would shape the modern porn market centuries later. Then came the 19th century, and with it, photography. The invention of the camera in the 1830s made it possible to capture real people, something entirely new. Almost immediately, photographers began producing erotic photographs. These were small, secretive, and often hidden behind codes or euphemisms like French postcards. By the 1850s, there was a real commercial market. Studios produced images. Distributors circulated them through mail-order systems or private networks, and consumers collected them discreetly. Law enforcement tried to crack down, passing obscenity laws like the Comstock Act of 1873 in the United States, but demand only grew. For the first time in history, it makes sense to say there existed a pornographic market. Not an organized industry yet, but something very close. And then came cinema. When motion pictures were invented in the late 19th century, it took only a few years for filmmakers to create the earliest erotic films. Some of the first known examples appeared in the 1890s and early 1900s, produced in France, Argentina, and the United States. These films were extremely short, often 1 to 5 minutes, and shown privately at clubs, brothels, or underground gatherings. Filmmakers, actors, cameramen, and distributors created a small but unmistakable production ecosystem. You could argue this is where the real porn industry began: repeated production, specialized creators, consistent demand, and financial exchange. But the modern industry, the one people think of today, didn't truly emerge until the second half of the 20th century. The 1950 saw the rise of men's magazines, most notably Playboy, founded in 1953. While the magazine lacked explicit film-like content, its enormous success changed cultural attitudes around nudity and sexual expression. it also created a legal and economic space for sexualized media to become mainstream. Other magazines followed, Penthouse and Hustler, each pushing boundaries further. By the late 1960s, courts in many Western countries began relaxing obscenity restrictions, allowing more open distribution of erotic materials. Then, in the early 1970s, something happened that reporters later called the golden age of porn. Films like Deep Throat 1972 and The Devil in Miss Jones 1973 didn't just circulate secretly. They played in regular theaters, attracted celebrity attention, and sparked national debates. For the first time, porn films had budgets, storylines, marketing campaigns, and box office sales. There were directors, producers, distributors, and recognizable stars. This is the moment historians often identify as the birth of the modern porn industry, an actual industry with contracts, labor, profits, legal battles, and cultural impact. But technology continued to reshape everything. The arrival of home video in the late 1970s changed production forever. VHS tapes allowed people to view adult content privately, and the industry exploded in size. By the 1980s, there were hundreds of studios producing thousands of titles a year. The 1990s brought cable television, subscription channels, and pay-per-view services. Again, the industry adapted and expanded, and then came the Internet, perhaps the most transformative invention of all. In the mid-1990s, adult websites appeared online, and within a few years they reshaped the entire landscape of commercial sexual content. Suddenly, distribution costs dropped to almost zero. Content moved from physical to digital. New business models appeared: memberships, streaming platforms, subscription services. The barrier to entry lowered as well, allowing amateurs to participate in production independently. What had once been a tightly controlled system of studios and distributors became a sprawling digital economy. By the 2000s and 2010s, the industry had become global, decentralized, and deeply intertwined with the evolution of the Internet itself. So, when was the porn industry invented? There isn't a single answer. Erotica is ancient, mass production dates back to the printing press, photography introduced commercialization, early film introduced organized production. But if you're looking for the true birth of the modern porn industry, the one with recognizable studios, marketing, distribution chains, and mainstream cultural awareness, then the 1970s are the milestone. From ancient carvings to digital streaming, the porn industry wasn't invented at a single moment. It evolved step by step, shaped by technology, culture, and human curiosity. Its history is less about a single beginning and more about a long, complicated story of expression, restriction, innovation, and commerce.